Welcome to KDH Collective's NeuroPod, a journey where we delve into the intricate world of neurodivergence within the therapy room. Join Katie Holmes, a licensed professional counselor with 16 years of experience, and Erica Thibodeau, a seasoned licensed professional clinical counselor, as they wholeheartedly share their extensive expertise, personal encounters, and therapeutic insight. Our aim is to foster greater understanding and appreciation for this remarkable population.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about sensory profile of sound sensitivity. And this could mean sensory seeking behaviors or sensory avoidant behaviors regarding sound. So Keisha, where would you like to start with this topic?
So I think it's important in mental health to look at this aspect of every human. It's not just about autism or ADHD. Anybody that's in my office, social anxiety, any sort of phobia, panic disorder, anything like that, I am looking at this type of sensitivity as it would relate to what they're struggling with in my office.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just found that there are some people with a sound sensitivity who feel startled easier and like more traumatized by just normal sounds. So maybe they work in an environment where people walk up to them, or at a drive-through window where people come, and that's like very shocking every car because of this sound sensitivity. So it's just an important piece of providing mental health help, I think.
Yes, and tying it to, like, sometimes I'm putting on my investigator cap and I'm like, oh, you're doing this behavior at these times. What else is happening here? And looking for, is there a sense that's being triggered? And sound can often, when they're around other people, so sounds of like their environment, like you mentioned, sounds of the people in their space, repetitive sounds, driving tends to, I notice sounds can be very overwhelming. I really feel like we're covering the sensitive system, like the system that's kind of in the on position, where they're taking in a lot of sound, or they're noticing sounds, getting overwhelmed by sounds, distracted by sounds. And maybe those people would be seeking to avoid. What about sensory seeking with sound?
So I know, like for myself, so I would think people that are sensory avoidant of sound would probably prefer meditation. Things like that would be very calming for them. I am sensory seeking, right? I like loud music. I like repetitive beats. People get annoyed hearing my music over and over again, but I think I'm just a good example of that's what gets me like excited or ready for my day, not sitting in quiet contemplation.
And sometimes that repetitive sound input can be very soothing. Do you ever match yours with motion?
That's interesting. No, but I bet rocking on a swing would be like nice,
Yeah, I know of two teenagers, like
dancing.
one swings, yeah, dancing, moving, exercise, intense music with exercise. Um, Two teenagers that I know that use loud sound input as a soothing mechanism also moved at the same time. Um, it is interesting how I have noticed the pattern of when it's used as input for soothing, it is in the background. They're doing something else a lot of the time. Driving, cooking, playing, playing video games. I've definitely seen kids do that, but they want like both stimulus at the same time. Like they want the music and the other thing, you know?
Together. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that there's something along the lines of like beats per minute, but I think when we have a nervous system that feels excited or needs excitement, maybe that's more of what's happening. Then we're sensory seeking. So then the sounds are repetitive and calming. But maybe if our system is too cranked up, then we're sensory avoidant. And so sounds would be more traumatizing to those nervous systems. Yeah. But I think figuring it out and figuring out what the sound does for each person is important. And it's not like we can be in this Pollyanna sort of non-stress state, like that life is about stressors and
Yes.
like kind of interference. But I think as therapists, we have to include this when we're treating an individual because it's such a neurological like staple of how they exist in the world for any human. And if we
Yes.
say we're all the same, then we say everybody should meditate. Maybe not.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and you know, you mentioned misophonia. I've noticed dinners, you know, this is where the sound of chewing is really overwhelming or upsetting or dysregulating to someone's system. I've also noticed in the case of someone with autism, the sound of S's really bothered them, but also chewing and chewing gum. And I think that if if dinners are a point of contention in a family when I'm working with a family or a kid, or the kid is my client and the parent, like things break down at dinner. I found out like with one of them, the child was diagnosed with autism, but the step parent had misophonia, you know, and so just starting to understand the sensory needs of the family members that are maybe in collision with each other. I have one kiddo who is like sensory avoidant and one who is sensory seeking. And it is a difficult balance in our household, you know.
To tend to both. Well, and it makes me think that misophonia piece, I'm sure it occurs in all nervous systems, but when I've observed it in my office or with someone I know, it normally is an over-controlled individual. So if you think of like the spectrum, there's under-controlled versus over-controlled at the other end, right? It's a line. Over-controlled are quieter, they're internalizers, they spend more time inside themselves thinking. I find misophonia occurs with those individuals more. Whereas the more extroverted, under controlled are probably more sensory seeking. I could totally be wrong. That's just an observation in my office. It's anecdotal, but
Mm-hmm.
there's more to it than just the sound sensitivity. There's something else
Mm,
going on neurologically about the way that people experience the world, which causes the sounds to be more traumatizing. I
mm-hmm.
don't know how, or
Yeah.
more annoying or abrasive.
Yeah, dysregulating. Yeah,
Yes,
totally.
that's a good word, dysregulating.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I know what you mean. I always think of it as a system, like an internal system that's in the on position, like their limbic system or their nervous system is like in the on position. And so and we know this with anxiety, they're more alert to the world around them. They notice more things. Even just with general anxiety, it's like those people are noticing more things. And it might not be sound, it might be smells, or it might be visual things, but their system is definitely more engaged and active than someone without generalized anxiety or without these other neurological diagnoses.
Well, and it's making me think, because I've been doing a deep dive on the brain and understanding what happens in the brain. So there's a hub in our brain called the superior colliculi. This is just a quick version. And that is where we orient to stressful things in our environment. So the superior colliculi controls a lot of stuff. But if something is a threat, that is the part of the brain that sends the shock and the threat kind of message to the LC, which is the locus coeruleus. And then we go into this like threat system at that point, and then it's sent to the PAG, which is where the feelings and everything else is, where our affect is. But I think when we hear a sound, whether it's threatening or not, but we think it's threatening because of the way the sound enters our ear, right? Because that's what's at the heart of this. Then our brain is registering it as a threat. And so it is sending it down that brain path to then be read as a threat and to react as a threat, whether it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? And often
Mm-hmm.
misophonia, it's considered like people get aggressive, like they're angry. It's an irritable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely triggers like our fight or flight response. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I bet there's more that goes on in the nervous system as to what registers as threat or not. Right. And the nervous system is part, I think our hearing and our vision, these are all ways that we determine what stimuli is in our environment. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. This is just making me think because I'm putting pieces together.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, it's interesting because we get confused. Our system gets confused about threat. And
Mhm.
so sometimes when a person is in a certain state, more things seem like a threat. Well, okay, so with a history of trauma, of course, we misassociate things as threats that aren't actually threats. And so I think certain systems are have been more exposed to threats, and so they associate sounds with something that could be dangerous. Then sometimes with trauma, people are wired to not sense danger. So they might not register sound as threat. But when we remove trauma from the conversation, in general, systems are either registering in a neutral range, over registering, or under registering, right? Those sounds as a stimulus. Sometimes I think people don't even register certain sounds, and some hear the sound of the light bulbs buzzing.
True. And that is one of the questions, which brings us to this,
Yes,
like
bring up the profile.
just some just general questions that I asked to try to figure out if someone has an auditory processing issue. Responds negatively to unexpected or loud noises. So do they cry? Do they hide? Do they feel distress when they hear a loud noise, like a vacuum, a dog barking, a hair dry, yeah. Do they hold their hands over ears? This would be a child, right? But it's more like, do they feel like sounds are assaulting for
Or
them?
even like a history of this, because sometimes people will grow out of this behavior because they become conditioned or they are exposed enough. But if they did this in childhood, this is great information to have if they have a
Yes.
history of reacting this way to sounds.
And that does come up when I ask people, which is so interesting. Has trouble completing tasks when the radio is on. So again, we would look at that as ADHD, but it might be a sound sensitivity. Like I had a client recently, panic disorder, and we did this profile and I found out they had a sound sensitivity, which was part of the panic disorder.
Mm.
It was a bunch of sensitivities going on, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you, because they were diagnosed with ADHD, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
actually, when I
Mm-hmm.
met them, I was like, oh yeah, ADHD. No, probably not. Probably misdiagnosed. It was probably a sensory sensitivity on many levels, not just sound. Distracted or has trouble when there is a loud noise around. Can't work with background noise like refrigerator or fan. I mean, could we even, like, if someone's not that sensitive to sound, that is, you, if I asked that question, they would be like, that's crazy. No, I don't hear the fan.
Mm-hmm.
To people that
Oh,
are,
let me tell you, the sound of my refrigerator bothers me so much. I actually have unplugged it and plugged it back in just to see if maybe it would like reset itself and not be so loud.
I love
I am
that.
definitely one of those people who is like very sensitive to certain sounds.
Which I think can
Yeah, keep
lead to
going.
feeling like overwhelmed or annoyed when you have lots of sounds around you that you can't escape, you know? I'm not as
Hmm.
sensitive to sound, but it does, like a noise machine will grate on me. Like
Yeah.
I don't like that constant, like if there's like 5 different types of noise machines, there's certain ones I can tolerate and certain ones I can't. It's interesting. Let me finish saying these. Appears to not hear what you say. So it seems like they're tuning you out, but they're obviously listening to something else, right? Or they don't have, it might be the opposite. Like instead of it's like a hypersensitivity, it's a hypo.
Hmm.
Doesn't respond when their name is called and then enjoys making noises. You know, maybe they like the sounds of certain things.
My one child who is more sensory seeking with sound makes a lot of sounds, makes a lot of repetitive sound. The other one gets really agitated. And I would say it is hard. And I have sound sensitivity, but I don't have sensitivity to chewing. Like that is not one of my sounds. Mine is definitely more electronic, like repetitive whirring or buzzing, or I mean, I could go on and on. We don't have to like analyze me, but it is interesting because I go into this place of like half I was gonna say half existence, and you would probably be like, oh, disassociation. But like I just kind of like numb my listening.
Well, I know. And then to me, then it's like, we just want our clients to wear like noise canceling headphones. And if they are sensory seeking, maybe we want them to listen to music with that repetitive beat, and we want them to do that more regularly. It just depends on what their mental health issue and how this would relate. Like, again,
Absolutely.
if just tuning it out works, great.
Right.
But for some people with an even more heightened,
Oh,
that would work.
absolutely. And there's some things you cannot tune out. And I mean, I think that you mentioned something about we can't, you know, isolate ourselves in the world and change the world to adapt to us. But I will say that so often people have adapted their world to fit their sensory needs. They have figured out a way. If they have the education and the means, they have figured out a way to adapt their environment to meet their needs. They either isolate, shut it out, put in noise canceling headphones. You know, I would say seeking is a little bit easier to accommodate than avoidance.
Agreed. But it's interesting to me, this, if you think of the noise or the sensory seeking in relationship to sound, that actually calms me, right? So if I don't have enough time listening to music that's repetitive,
Yes, there you go.
I will feel dysregulated or just kind of, but when I can listen to it, and I ride my bike, right? There is some sort of like synergetic, it's like this flow I get into that's almost magical. And so I think that either way, I know we can't have a world that exists for us, not ultimately, right? But either way, we have to see what our needs are and try to give it to us. Because if we force someone with a sound sensitivity to be in loud environments, they are going to be dysregulated. And if we don't allow people who need the sound to have that to regulate themselves, they're going to be like amped up and it's going to be too much. So there is a certain amount of finessing. I don't even know how to say it.
And what I keep thinking of while you're talking about this is just like classroom environments and how difficult classroom environments are for teachers, for kids, for everyone to have their needs met. And they're getting increasingly more difficult to accommodate the needs of everyone. And there's one of my go-to kind of viewpoints is that there isn't anything wrong with your needs. We can't always figure out how to get them met, but we just start at this baseline of like, you're not wrong for needing this or wanting this, you know, and your needs aren't wrong. And this other person's needs aren't wrong. And they might be in collision, but neither of you are wrong, you know?
Different.
And people have lived with so much upset, shame, hiding, embarrassment, remorse for these needs, for these sensory sensitivities.
It's so true. And thinking that they should be different when really it's just like that. I think at the core of their shame, they think that neurologically they should be different, like somehow they're wrong. But
Or
really,
they're told that, like, get
right.
over it. It's blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, you're so sensitive. I hear a lot of that actually in the Midwest. It's something that I feel like I'm unwinding and like unweaving a lot with people. It's like, oh my gosh, like you're just a human with ears and your ears are a certain way, your sensitivity is a certain way, or your body, your sensory system is made a certain way. And look at how brilliantly you figured out how to navigate. Wow, that's really exhausting. Let's figure out, you know, a lot of the time it's undoing the story that they've accumulated about their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh.
Well, and that can go back. That brings up the whole attachment trauma related to attachment. So not having a parent attuned to you and what you need. And for various reasons, right? It's hard if their sensory needs are different than yours. But also, you know, maybe we do think one way of being is more right than the other, right? Introversion versus extroversion. Somehow extroverts are better and introverts are not. I don't know where that came about, but that seems to be a theory. But I think when it comes to attunement, we have to make sure we're attuning to our kids in a way that works for them so they can validate their needs on a very core level. And then as therapists, we probably do need to do trauma work with our clients to unravel that shame.
Yes. Especially like sound sensitivity with children. So if a parent has sound sensitivity and they're avoidant, I mean, it can really cause a breakdown in the relationship, because in the beginning, the only way that babies can communicate is through really loud, shrill sounds that stop them from being left in the forest, you know?
It's
And
true.
that can be really hard for parents, for neurodiverse parents,
Well, and I think being
or
able to,
anxious parents.
yeah, to honor their nervous system and wear a noise canceling, the noise reducing ones, it won't shut out all sound. You'll still hear,
Right, right.
it just won't be as intense. It's such a part of how we attach. Really, I mean, even as you say it, I could see it in a parent, sound sensitivity, cooking, whatever. I don't know why I'm seeing a mom. It could be a dad, but anyway, sound sensitivity. Kids walk in screaming, excited to see their mom. Their mom is like assaulted by the sounds. And there would be like a disconnect with the kids and the parent. Whereas if the noise canceling and if we like calm ourselves down before we talk, so a little bit of work from both parties, we could connect and have those moments.
Oh, and Keisha, you're actually making me think about this. Um, I was just reading this book, and it just gave this little brief story, but it was a person who had been a part of a Zen meditation community and then left because she just didn't belong there anymore as a parent with like messy kids and had a nursing baby and all these things. But she mentioned this little phrase, and it speaks to this. She was like, I'm never surprised when adult children of alcoholics are drawn to Zen, because Zen is like black cushions in an empty room, and you sit and stare at the wall and meditate, and there's no sound, and everything is like controlled and orderly and predictable. And having been to a Zen community and a meditation community in and out, I really like, one of the things you just spoke to is like how often is the reaction of the sensitivity from an unpredictable, loud, chaotic, violent, sometimes childhood. Mine is definitely, part of my reaction is chaotic, loud, raging, unpredictable person.
Well, and with that being said, I think that there is a neurological thing that exists first, right? It's the way we are
Yeah.
neurologically before. Then the environment creates a reaction to it.
Yes.
And then the third part is how we react to both of those, I guess, or the
Nature
environment.
through nurture.
Yes, it's all of it together, because I don't think every
Yes.
person in an alcoholic, like the idea of Zen makes me want to vomit. Did I used to
Right.
force myself to do that? Yes, I did. And I was raised in an alcoholic family, right? I would stare at the dot. I hated it. I did it.
Well, and it's funny because I also don't love it either. I didn't like it, felt constraining and like too many rules and actually way too quiet. But it is funny that something like that can draw people who are just seeking order, right? Or seeking quiet or seeking peace, control, again, control.
Yeah.
And it just, when you described that mother, like, and the overwhelm, if you're watching in the video, like the overwhelm Keisha exhibited when they come in, like shrill excitement to see them, it really reminded me of people I work with who just did have really chaotic upbringing.
I know. And who knows what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's where me and you will talk all. Is it trauma? Is it their biology? I don't
Is
know.
it their brain? I know.
I think
I
it's both.
know.
But I do think the way through it, which I found interesting. So when people have severe sound sensitivities, I think it's called listening therapy. It's from an OT. So it's an occupational therapist they would see. They wear these, I think it's like you listen to it 30 minutes every single day, and it changes the way sound enters your ear so that it actually changes it. I know.
This is amazing. I had no idea.
Fascinating. I only
It
know because
makes
I have
so
a
much
client
sense.
that got it.
Makes
Yeah.
so much sense. It's like, I love OT for this. I love OT for all sensory needs. But this is incredible.
I know.
And it makes so much sense because of the way that it intakes into the parts of the brain that you were describing earlier.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and so if you have a client, I mean, because this is for therapists, if you have a client who is struggling with this stuff, I definitely think sending them to an OT and really encouraging them. I'm a behaviorist. I reinforce as much as I can. So with clients that have these issues that do get prescribed, it's called a OT diet, but this specific one, I reinforce them doing it because it's
Yeah,
such a
that's amazing.
powerful. I mean, I don't know. You can do noise reduction, but you can't really. This again could exist on a spectrum. You could have a mild sensitivity all the way to like barely be able to function because sounds
Mm-hmm.
are so assaulting to your nervous system. So I think OT provides some support, to address it in ways that you probably otherwise will not be able to. And
Mm-hmm.
my last piece on this, because we're about out of time, when I have chronic suicidality in my office, so this means they are suicidal a lot. They stay pretty much in a state of suicidal ideation. If it's not weekly, it's pretty frequently. I'm always looking for the sound sensitivity. What I've observed in my two worst cases, our most extreme cases, both of them, it was a sound sensitivity. As soon as we took them out of that work environment that was intense like that, sound wise, suicidal ideation was less. And they actually, I thought they would report less anxiety, no, less depression, which was fascinating
Wow.
to me that that's what it was
No, that
registering.
makes so much sense because they had to like go into that, what I was jokingly calling the half dead space, but like that makes so much sense. That
Explain
they,
more.
well, because like part of depression, I feel like happens when we get overwhelmed and then we have to suppress. Like we get burnt out, our system gets burnt out. It's so tired of being on. It goes into this like apathetic place. And it's not always what depression is, but it's sometimes what depression is.
Like you can't get away from the threat.
Yes. So you just kind of like go down. Like it's a down motion inside yourself of like giving up, surrendering. Like
Yeah.
it'll
So if
never
the
get
bear's,
better.
yeah, if the bear's trying to eat you,
Exactly.
your nervous system probably releases some stuff so you can be okay with being eaten. I mean,
Exactly.
truthfully,
That's
that's
exactly it.
probably the
No, that's
extreme.
exactly, yes. There's a whole bunch
Okay.
of science behind that.
I love this. See, so as therapists, it's our job to look into this and help our clients feel, I think, empowered to own whatever this is about them, whether it's a sensitivity or a hypo, because I might have a hypo,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have a hyper.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is some stuff on like, what is it that the crunching sounds? What is it? The RSM or
Oh,
there's
ASMR.
yes, that people love that. And really helping your client be empowered to discover what it is, what does it create for them, and then okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's seize that and let's add that to your mental health tool bag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yay. All right. Until next time, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.